Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fans from around the world and bewildered spouses currently enduring the live stream, you are very welcome here to the afternoon matchup. And it promises to be an exhilarating one as both of these teams are locked in an elimination game, trying to fight their way through to Division 1 happening this weekend and brought to you here at Ultimate Canada. It is my pleasure to be Lorcan Murray and even more so to introduce the inimitable Rebecca Thompson. How are you feeling?
Fantastic, excited to be here. One team headed to Division 1, the other team to Division 2, so everything on the line in this one.
As now we see working their way down the pitch with fluent efficiency up until the final hurdle, and the Ravens swooping in and snatching that one away. The hand immediately goes to the middle of the pitch. It has to go back. Fantastic heads-up defense by Harry J., one of the leaders of this D-line. The double-lined sideline, again posing some troubles, understandably so, as the wind whistles gently from left to right across the pitch. And slowly the Rams settle into a zone after starting on offense, a necessary adjustment to be able to make in these kinds of conditions as the Ravens try to fly under heavy conditions, and Jay tries to save it, can't. Or sorry, that was Fang Lin, but it doesn't matter as none of them were able to get it, picking up the disc, a man who we will be saying a lot of. Huang gets the dump off. They swing it all the way around. The Rams. Gentle. Persuasive, and then there's a fantastic backhand break and a little celebration to tie it in. Excellent stuff from the Rams, able to get it on the second ask.
Yeah, and just staying on that break side, waiting for the second opportunity, knowing that his thrower had the capability to break the mark on that one. Great heads-up play from the offense, not trying to clear too quickly into the stack. He just took a second to look at his thrower, make that eye contact, and just like that, they lead 1-0. Excellent
throw coming out of the hands of Ryan Pelosi, and you will notice John Huang and Ryan Pelosi immediately taking command of the offense. That's number 25, number 19 respectively from the Ryerson Rams. Real leaders on the O-line. And two men behind whom Ryerson will be hoping to qualify for Division 1. A downwind hold, a little bit of a hiccup, but one they were able to correct. So now it falls to the Ravens to respond in kind. And based off what we've seen so far, especially in how games were decided in the opening bracket, just how influential has the conditions been?
I mean, that wind, going downwind, especially on this field, directly up and down just about. It's a second defender on that downwind play. We've seen a lot of huck and pin style of defense as well. Teams willing to just put it out of their end to try and trap a team down in that upwind side.
A necessary tactic in these kinds of situations, as we see once more a zone, a downwind one. Brilliantly taken in by Colic. I thought it was going to hit the dirt, and Ravens moving swiftly down the line. Lee able to get the dump back, and they're just swinging around. Lockhead tries to connect, although there's a few smiles after that particular call. You see Lockhead was working excellently there with Tsukamoto. But almost every Ravens player seemed to be touching the disc lightning quick as they flowed through that zone as if it wasn't even there. Lockhead, Tsukamoto makes a move down the line, looks to collect it for the easy score, and does so.
There we go. Carleton right away making their offense look really easy, really efficient, and no turnovers as well to work it all the way down the field. Not something we saw in our first broadcast today. We were seeing turnovers both on offense and defense for all of these teams in the wind. Carleton, maybe a little bit of a deeper team here and showing that right away.
So, Carleton really exhibiting their confidence with the disc. It was similar enough to the style that we saw the Rams using as well, only they got perhaps a smidge too excited and overthrew a shot that was stolen away. So now they're going to get another downwind point, maybe trying to hold this one a bit more flawlessly. As you have to say, Carleton looked very confident.
Yeah, effortless there. They know what they need to do to win this game. Both teams, everything on the line with Division 1 in for tomorrow, as we've talked about already. But Carleton definitely a team who contended for bids earlier in other tournaments this season as well, so they'll feel like this is something that they really deserve.
So the Raven, amongst the most cunning animals in the avian family, renowned for their wisdom. Let's see how it will serve them here. Poise, such an integral ingredient to playing in these kinds of conditions. Yes, the shots feel more on, but can you take them convincingly. The Rams. And they come together. Starting things off is the man who finished the last point for the Ravens. Now they look to work it around. Huang with the disc. He has Peloz immediately next to him. That causes the zone to collapse. He tries to get it off to Sun Yang, but that one was just a bit too forced. Excellent defensive pressure by the Ravens.
You could see the way that the cup there was putting so much pressure on the thrower, and the mids upfield were taking away every possible hole that there was, giving no option for Ryerson to look upfield at all.
So now Fang Lin centers it immediately. And that's McCausland, a man whose facial hair, while questionable, decision-making considerably less so. McCausland again. Searching. An effortless backhand break. Elongates it around his body. They try to get it to him on the return. It takes 2 shots and bounces off the hands. Both of them. Here's a little bit of a call. Now you could see they were trying to return the disc as quickly as possible. Campbell got it from McCausland, tried to give it back to him, but perhaps trying to force it a bit too quickly as McCausland didn't seem ready.
Yeah, it looked a little bit of a shaky decision on that one as well. Like you said, didn't really seem ready for that disc to come up at all. Looked like Harry J here making the foul call on that throw. A jump ball really put up there into a big crowd of people as well. It's easy to see how contact can be made when there's that many people underneath the disc.
That's exactly what we were talking about when we said poise is integral. Almost trying to force it. You get away with those kinds of throws normally, but into the wind, other ideas. As the disc goes back in a contested foul call, which means it will return to the hands of Campbell. McCausland gets to complete his clearing cut, so Campbell currently in somewhat of a 1-6, generally an offensive structure favoured by the Japanese and the more ambitious coaches in the world. Let's see how the Ravens get themselves out of this one. A straight undercut. Respectable. Tries to pop it into McCausland, can't quite get it, but McCausland keeps working. Campbell now trying to get free in front of him. Stutter steps, stall count gets ever higher, and eventually they're able to squeeze it in on an open side cut to the streaking figure of Harry J, who's really making himself known so far. He got a D earlier in the game. Gets that score there for the upwind break.
And Carleton there did a good job of making room for the next cut. They got a little bit stagnant on that first one with the offense trying to get open on the open side. They recognized it, they cleared out, created space for Harry J to make that cut in, and that's a good thing you want to see teams able to do. Recognize when something's not working, adjust on the fly, and they were able to still get the score.
Another aspect of it was you saw McCausland be shut down. You saw Campbell be shut down. Both of them trying very hard to get free on the dump. They were smart enough not to continue clogging the space. They cleared right out of there. And that final cut for Jay was, I mean, it was an open side lateral cut. That shouldn't work in the end zone. But it does when your handlers are selfless enough to get just get out. How many times have you seen a turnover because a handler refuses to exit that space?
I mean, it happens all the time when you start dancing. If you don't commit to the direction that you're going, it's going to cause confusion for your thrower and make it very easy for your defender to start to read your hips and your movement direction that you're going and get the D.
So now, the Rams, sure-footed in hilly terrain, stumble somewhat in the opening blocks of this game. And the Ravens look to soar ever higher. We saw how effective they were at cashing in the upwind breaks in their previous game. And that is a crucial score to get now, as here they come with the zone. The towering and imposing figure of McCausland at its point. It's always nice to see. I like it when people put tall players as the front mark in their zone.
Yeah, it's very intimidating as a thrower as well, especially if you go for any of those over-the-top break side shots. You've got a very large set of hands in your way.
Something I experience sometimes as well, being a shorter player, is that you can't see the field. You're just looking at somebody's nipples. As now, Huang, a man who is going to have to find a way through this zone, as he is the one his team is looking to. A little bit of fakes there to move back the cup. Get out of my space. Oh, a big bid, and that one dubious, but Fang Lin doesn't hurt anybody, and they just keep moving as quick as they can. Can't quite complete the sweeping play across. Good play back and forth. As you see Paloz pops it back. Now it's in Huang's hands again. Paloz makes the move behind him. Huang instead keeps forcing it down the line, just playing Luke Skywalker. And that's how you beat this kind of zone. Try to set yourself up in a 2v1 situation and just break the mark. You're not really going to get away with overheads in this situation. And nobody is coming to the near sideline. There are acres of space, and right now, basically unmarked in it, is the form of Julian Barnsteiner.
A little miscommunication on the far side as well there. The Carleton players were trying to call the Ryerson player out of bounds. However, Rob Langridge on the far side, the observer, was calling it in, and that is an active call that the observers make. So Carleton needs to be aware of that and shoulder check to see what the observer is signaling before they try to stop play.
As you see Puckrin throwing it through the middle of the zone. And now they're starting to work it around. For a moment it looked like Puckrin was going to have to lay out, but fortunately for him he had a teammate waiting for him. And they get it back to Paloz, middle of the pitch. Paloz sees Huang, hits him, goes again. Lovely aggressive handler play as now he looks to the corner for somebody to be free. And arriving, but unfortunately unable to corral it.
Yeah, Paloz there just looking like he got so excited about that shot to the corner. It was an open shot, again with that wind, trying to put extra spin on it and made it a little bit difficult to catch.
Puckrin unfortunately unable to corral it in that instance. You can see how quickly the Ravens go. They have the deep shot available. Instead they go for the under. It bounces, runs down the pitch and somehow collects it. I mean, that counts. Colic is going to have to get it. Fanglin immediately gives it back to him. Look at how quick and incisive that offensive flow is from the Ravens.
Absolutely taking advantage of that turn. A quick turn over there. Colic gaining about 5 yards with that bobble catch as well, but kept his cool the whole way. Give and go straight into the end zone. Jay with the score, and Carleton 3-1 up now. They look a little bit in control already.
Even from the first possession they had, the flawless offensive hold with the wind at their backs, you saw them like badgers zigzagging down the pitch. And when you can see that in the opening exchanges, and you know that these teams have acclimatized themselves to an extent to, I mean, you don't get a second chance. The knockout nature of this tournament takes a little getting used to. Both these teams are ready for it, and to me it looks like the Ravens are just a little bit better. Their offense just looks crisper.
Yeah, I absolutely have to agree with that. The pace and the speed that they're moving the disc up the field as well in those transitions, making it so hard for Ryerson to catch up on defense.
So now they find themselves on offense once again, and that's what we were talking about. The Ravens so adept at cashing in those upwind breaks for another downwind break and pushing out the lead. That's 3 points on the trot for them. They started the half on defense, and again, another important thing to keep in mind, they will receive the disc with the wind at the start of the second half. And one wonders, if it gets to that point, will it be too far gone?
In this wind, anything is possible at that point.
Kevin Garnett. As now we see the Ravens again setting up in that zone. They're more than happy to let the Rams dump it backwards. They just don't let them get it off laterally. And look at Huang immediately knowing what to do in that situation. He'll give it back to me. I'll throw it and go. Aggressive handlers are how you tear apart these zones. You need to move after you throw. Paloz, another man well accustomed to it, as we find it again in the hands of Huang. Gets it across to Paloz, who keeps the flow going. That's Shering. Tries to get it back to Paloz. Can't quite. Options are shut down immediately, but there's the quick, nippy play. Fantastic stuff. As the Rams working their way down, Huang goes back into the middle of the pitch. Hansen back to Huang. Now Huang looks to the end zone, and I'm not entirely sure what he threw, but it'll do. Nope, the observer calls him out of bounds. For a moment it seemed like he was going to remain inbounds, and I have got to say I am a huge fan of that throw, but it didn't quite come off for them.
Yeah, had a wide open receiver in that far side of the end zone. Just tried to sit it up with the high release backhand there, but unfortunately the wind just carrying it a little bit far out of bounds. But I got to agree with you there. Definitely a good shot into space there.
As now, the Ravens in their own end zone. Fanglin with the disc. Rams have been able to get that transition zone onto them, as they're forced to keep moving it around. Fanglin sends it across. So now they try to switch it back. This is good holding defensive pressure. And then that one's going to float. The D is available. Two Rams screaming in, and able to get to that one first. So now with another look. And this is similar to their first offensive hold as well. They haven't had a flawless offense yet. Swang pops that one over the top and Palaz collects it. But when they rely so heavily on those two players, you really have to wonder how far they can take them.
We saw the same thing with Sherbrooke in the first game we streamed this morning as well, really relying on two handlers to really run the show and break down those zone defenses, and in the end it wasn't able to sustain them for the entire length of the game. York able to make a comeback in that one. So we'll see if Ryerson can make some adjustments, maybe get some more people involved here, but staying involved so far, 3-2 down. We'll see how it goes for the length of the game.
So let's see if the Rams can get the disc back off the Ravens. They haven't been able to do it yet. And that includes on the defensive points that the Ravens scored. They've got some sticky claws.
Quick update for you at home as well. We do have one more game to go after this at 4 p.m. We will be streaming the women's game to go, which is going to be between McMaster and Toronto. So that one, a big game. Both of those teams were in Division 1 last year, so one of those teams will not be returning to the top division. It will be a great game for us here and for you at home.
Certainly something to look forward to on a Friday afternoon, as I'm sure you're all getting ready to go home and attack the weekend. As there goes up another pull, just about making it past the halfway line. Yet to really see any rolling pulls, which I'm surprised by. A lot of people still trying to test their might against the wind. As here come the Ravens. Colic gets it to Bailey, but kind of underthinks that one. Throws it huge, but it is taken in by Lay, who immediately tries to send it, but underthrows that himself, and Shering is able to sneak in and get the D.
And there's a turnover now from the Carleton offensive unit that we weren't necessarily expecting to see them put up in this. So clean and efficient so far.
I thought Colic had thrown the turnover initially when that backhand just went searing out of his hands, but Lay was wise to it, able to get in, but then forced himself ever so slightly and undershot the end zone. Palaz centers it into the middle. Waiting there for it is Hansen. A valuable O-line cutter, especially useful for his throws going into the wind, as that one was just behind Palaz and he couldn't get it. A fortunate mistake. Now the Ravens get another look straight into the end zone. Lockhead picks it up. A real leader for this Ravens side. Beautiful flick or backhand break inside for Colic and the score.
So Ravens able to get that disc back pretty quickly after the turnover as well, as they now lead by 2, up 4-2 here in this game, easily getting themselves a downwind point. We'll see if they can go and get another upwind break here. I think that could really start to kind of put the nails in the coffin here already for this Ryerson team, who is starting to look a little bit shaky in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you make of going to the line psychology? So you can see Ryerson still haven't gotten everybody onto their line, whereas the Ravens, a little bit calmer. Ryerson heads down ever so slightly, walk. Like, do you really think you can infer a lot from how they travel in those positions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think your team having the mentality that you're always ready to go, you're always ready for that next point, the next moment in the game that you need to go and try and fight for the disc, running back to the line, especially when you only have 70 seconds to get your hands up on offense here, being able to deliver a quick message to your team, make a quick adjustment is going to make a big difference in this one.
And there, a little bit of a roll. That's what I'm saying, people. Come on. Gets it a little bit further. Trapped him on the sideline. Huang tries to get back into the middle. Palaz is available directly behind him, but he sides against it. Still, that high release backhand, he is a huge fan of it, and you can see why. Brilliantly weighted, sits down and falls into the open hands of Puckering, who then just pops it into the end zone for the score, and that looked a lot better. It looked really bad, and then it looked pretty good.
That's the first clean point we've seen here from Ryerson as well, able to keep that one in their hands, not turning it over downwind. And you're right, didn't look like it was in a good position, trapped on that sideline, but they did a good job. Once they got it off there was no defense in the backfield to cover the cuts going to the end zone. So Carleton there maybe just needing to adjust a little bit, make sure they're picking up those cuts once it gets broken past the cup.
There's that classic issue when that high backhand went up by Huang. You could see the Ravens sneaking in and going, I can get this D. Puckering was able to take it down, and when he turns around, he had nothing but open space and Pavel Shering waiting for him in it. So, they respond. I wouldn't describe it as their most confident. because they did kind of get away with that a little bit. I didn't like how Long Huang stared downfield before. He had a dump the entire time, but he had no interest in it. So I don't think that's a sustainable offensive structure to follow.
Yeah, I agree. You need to really look to that dump at stall 4 or 5, ideally a little bit earlier in these conditions as well. The earlier the better, to give your dump the time to get open.
I was actually taught to play by a Canadian, played on a TFP, won a world championship with him. Leo Yoshida is his name. He taught us 2-4-2, and he taught us it to the point where we were saying it in our sleep. As we see Bailey with the disc, trying to work against that cup, and there's a little bit of contact downfield. Sharing seemed to collide as he was moving across the cup with the figure of Sakamoto. You imagine Sakamoto is always going to be aggressive, trying to get in there and get that disc back in his hands.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen him be integral so far in those give-goes, especially breaking down this zone defense here from Ryerson.
So now Lockhead. I'm not sure I agree with the maintaining the zone look when they've been so ineffective with it so far, but it does seem to be reaping some small reward as you see them force Ravens back. Getting a little bit more contact. Lovely high release backhand. You see how quickly they want to move the disc. And there's the huge shot to the end zone. He was reading the wind, but unfortunately I don't think Colic was in the same fashion.
Yeah, and that one just catching it, like you said, Colic not quite reading it there, and it's going to sail away from him. But I like that look from Carleton. They did manage to split the deep defender he had to choose. He chose the right person to go to. He went to Colic. Unfortunately, the disc went over his head. But Carleton making a bold movement and now able, that huck and pin defense here, set up their zone.
It's so strange to me to even hear things like huck and pin. We call it huck and D. Policy is the same. And it's certainly something that we do an awful lot of in Northern Europe, where I come from, as now it is centered back into the middle. And there's that huge arcing swing. Not an easy pass. But that's why you have people like Russell Hansen on your team, because you can take those on comfortably. Sharing gets it back into the middle. Applause. Although there is a call.
So it looks like there was a travel called back here. It's called from a player on the farther side of the field. I think just watching those give and go motions, you do get 3 steps to make your next pass, but you cannot change your direction during those steps. So I think that was a call being made there. Just saying that Sharing there just maybe took a step to the inside of the field rather than continuing straight as he made that pass.
It's one of those things that most people do, but it doesn't get called that often, like travels or fast count. So now we see a bit more conversation on it. Sharing is going to retain the disc. And we wait for the stall count to be decided before we resume the game. And I like this look. Out of the Rams. Hansen being your anchor, he can keep those swings going. Peloz, the one who's able to break it down, send it through the zone. The likes of Nickham downfield, who's going to just be popping. You can see he kind of plays that mid-roll. He can get the pops. He can rock as a handler. Peloz pops it to Pickham, who tries to pick up a penguin but can't quite get it there in the end, as it rolls out of ground near the feet of Garcia. And the Ravens wasting no time in trying to get back to business. They do not want to slow down on the offensive end. They don't want to give the Rams a chance to rest. As that was Cameron to Bailey, gets it back in the middle of the Lockhead, and he sends it all the way over to Sakamoto. And they just want to keep rotating that disc. Lockhead decides against sending it to Bailey, instead goes back to Sakamoto and cuts himself down the pitch. I would prefer to see maybe a bit more swinging. There's so much distance to gain if they were to come towards us, and now they start to. Bailey, Sakamoto plays it back into the middle to Lay. Tries to get it back. Lay pops it out. Wonderfully taken in by Lockhead. Excellent defensive pressure there to cover that shot to the corner, but it only lasts for a few seconds until he hits the open Colic, but Colic can't keep the disc.
That's one of the first mistakes we've seen Colic make as well. He's been such a critical part of this offense here for Carleton so far. We've seen him streaking to the end zone time and time again. Did such a great job to get open on that far side and just bobbled it out of his hands.
Applause to Hansen in the middle of the pitch. They swing it out to Nickham, who seems to have stepped back into more of a central handler role now. He was popping. Sharing now going out to replace him in the popping department. Nickham. And Peloz, and they're stuck in their own end zone still. Hansen as well gets it to Peloz. Now there he is, moves across, finds a gap in between the cup, and now goes for a huge blade. Sakamoto was wise to it the whole time. And look how quickly the Ravens take flight. Lockhead. Sakamoto, middle of the pitch, directing traffic. trying to clear people out. And the Ravens so quick to move, and again one of those backhands just catches the sky and goes up into the air. As Peloz, he has Nickham, hits him. Shering coming under, incredibly open, criminally open as Lockhead saunters to catch up, but a timeout is called before the stall can be applied.
I think that's the right decision there from Schring, calling that timeout. Ryerson here need to find a way to work it all the way up the field to get a break. Still looking for their first break of the game here and an opportunity to do it. They're in the middle of the field. They're going upwind. Likely going to have a zone set up on them, though, so it'll be interesting to see what they call in order to work themselves out of it.
I do want to see what Ryerson can do going downfield. They haven't found a way to make more than 2 yards against the zone into the wind. Their attempts to do so have been stymied, mostly by the wind, it would seem, and then some smart positioning on the part of the Ravens defenders. But who do you think on that line right now could really take charge in the way that we have seen some of the Raven handlers do?
Well, I think Hansen and Schring have really got to take control of it at this point. They've been pretty central in the handler role so far for Ryerson, but they haven't been able, like you said, to move it upfield. They're doing a really good job of going laterally across the field, but not really gaining too many yards as they go. So they're going to want to look to maybe crash through the cup a little bit, get some give and goes that's going to open up the holes, and then hit that next shot upfield.
I would like to see Reason and Garcia maybe try and combine a little bit, because like you say, they're not opening up those holes because they're not really working together downfield, which allows them to be isolated as single defensive objectives. As now we see the Rams getting ready to reinitiate, Sharing with the disc, sporting quite a spiffy bobble hat, if you ask me. Gets it to Peloz. Peloz thinks about the ambitious break, but instead just pops it to Sharing, gets it back himself. Now that's the kind of smart play you want to see. Peloz doesn't go again, and here's the swing, and Hansen, instead of sending it across to Reason, I gotta say I'm not a huge fan of that look. Instead opts to keep it on that low sideline. And again, turns down the swing, perhaps not as confident in those throws as I initially thought he was. Garcia was wide open. Now he has Sharing, now he swings it across. Reason times his cut very well. Instead they go through the middle, and once again Sakamoto just has to wait for the wind to do all the hard work. Gets it across. Dunnigan, first time touching the disc in this point, sends it down the line comfortably to Cameron. Cameron to Sakamoto, it bounces up, anybody can have it. Peloz is the one who collects it, and that was a rather impressive grab. You can hear the sideline agree with him. And then just a bit of a rushed effort by Garcia sends that one high.
And that's where the wind really takes effect. Anything that is even an inch or even a centimeter or two too high normally than you should put it is going to catch the wind, and it's popping up, making it really hard to grab.
So Collick sends that one down the line to Lay. Fantastic cut from him. He went deep and then came under to acres of space. Collick a little bit indecisive with the dump cutting, and I hate that shimmy at the start of your dump cut. I want at least 3 steps, and I want them to be in a direction.
Yeah. Very easy there for the defender to read. Ryan Paulus had his eyes on Collick's hips the whole time, could see that he was dancing, hadn't made a decision. Collick figured he wasn't going to get open, so stopped moving, but unfortunately the throw had already gone up.
Now we call that the Shakira syndrome back home. Those hips don't lie, and he read them to perfection as now the Rams get another look in. Nickham can't hit Reason on those long throws, and it doesn't really seem like they have a handler out there who feels comfortable taking on those shots. You can really feel the lack of Hwang being on the disc. There's Nickham, and that is getting stifling. He's starting to suffocate, and somehow tries to find a breath of fresh air, but it is shut down by Sakamoto. Although there is a little bit of a call from Garcia, who thinks he may have gotten bumped as he went up for the second time.
Yeah, hard to tell how that affected the play. I'm not sure Garcia was going to get to that disc anyways. It was floating a little bit high above him, but there was some contact. Multiple players, again, underneath the disc, all staring at the Frisbee as well. So interesting to see what will happen here, but I'm not sure it necessarily affected the outcome of the play.
I feel like Garcia had one legitimate clean look at it and missed, and then after that, it's just... Every now and again you have to just go, look, there was 7 people, all of them were looking at one point in the sky, none of them were looking at each other. It makes sense, of course we hit each other. So, as they try to work out the literal definition of the word incidental, we can reflect on how this game, you have to say, has gotten a little bit messier. Starting to degrade somewhat in terms of offensive quality.
Yeah, and I'm not totally surprised to see that in a game to go with so much on the line as well. These teams start to get maybe a little bit desperate to get the point in, a little bit intense, or maybe just a little bit starting to move and force things to certain areas of the field as well, and it's paying off for the defenses, but the offenses not so much.
Important to note that was an uncontested foul as Garcia got to get the disc. He immediately popped it back to Palaz, who tried to get the swing off. I now believe we have some kind of violation call, but I do want to commend the very spirited resolution of that particular conversation.
And this has been the longest point we've had so far in this game, which definitely doesn't help in terms of degrading the quality. Both of the teams want to get their other lines back on the field and start getting some fresh legs into this game.
You've got to imagine that's the position of a lot of people on that sideline as they cheer on their teams. Hansen gets it to Palaz, and now they start to encroach ever so slightly with that force. Hansen swings it across Nickham, and he keeps the good times going out wide. Puckering with it, but can't complete the move. Garcia couldn't quite time that far sideline cut. They're going right through the middle instead. Puckering has Ryerson, decides not to take him deep. It's good work by Ryerson to give that space behind, but they're not attacking it. As the call goes up and they switch to match defense, Puckering with Palaz. Nice step in block, I like that. And that one just a little bit behind Hansen. As now the option comes and Lockhead tries to get it up, but Garcia, great coverage. Bailey back into the middle. And he swings it around to Cameron. Cameron gets it to Collick. I used to think Collick was winding up for big backhand hooks, but I think that's just his natural reaction whenever he receives the disc. Lockhead sees Collick completely on mark going downfield, but decides against it. Excellent defensive recognition by the Rams. As the Ravens happy to take their time, Cameron pops that one through the middle. And Lockhead, this time there's no one really near Lay. But he couldn't corral that disc, a little bit too fast.
Yeah, that one, like you said, zipping in towards that far corner of the end zone, and it looked like it just dropped slightly with the wind as his hand reached out to grab it. And again, going with one hand, you can see him, he just looked down at his hand as if it did something wrong, trying to make that catch as well. Need to really get both hands on that to make sure. Don't leave anything to chance in these situations.
Something I love about the way they're playing offense, they were always attacking the deep from one sideline and then the next, never letting them rest, which has got to fatigue you when you now have to come back in the opposite direction. Nickham to Hansen. Hansen wastes no time getting that to Puckering, to Schering. To Palaz. Tries to get to Puckering again. We've seen people force those throws in this game so far and it not work out. This time it's starting to work out a lot better for them. They're really setting themselves on those forward pivots. Nickham, Hansen. Yeah, Schering in front. He also has Puckering on the slightly more difficult flick break. There's Palaz. Nobody's making any cuts to the end zone, but they're still able to just work it through the middle. Puckering has really come alive on this particular possession. I was wondering where he was the last few times. So we see Ryerson get the disc. Back to Puckering. Palaz. And they've set themselves up into a clean 2-5. They send it to Puckering. I think it's very apparent he caught that disc and then jumped, and it is, so he takes it back out to the front of the end zone, or where he jumped from. Gets it back to Palaz, and now Palaz goes for the big one through! Nickham left it, Hansen tried to save it. It has to be said, that looked like it touched the ground, and it did.
But a great second attempt there from Hansen, and that's what you want to see your players doing in these game-to-go situations.
Lockhead was able to step in and get that block as Nickham left it, thinking it was intended for somebody else, as Cameron centres it back to Bailey. Plays it down the line. Back into the middle of the pitch. And Bailey just moving that cup about as they are forced towards the near sideline. Lockhead gets it back to Bailey. No one really going for that kind of huck and pin style this time. You know the Ravens trust themselves in this situation. Even if on this particular point they haven't been as incisive as they have been in the past. Collick wastes no time sending that one deep as quickly as he can. His intended receiver unfortunately not able to make up for that throw. Always coming out low. Dunnigan is very capable and will bid when given the chance, but I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to do there.
No, not at all. That one always sitting a little bit too low, and Dunnigan able to read it really well. Probably should have caught his D on or that one as well, but just stayed up and not able to quite get any hands on it.
So now Palaz. Trapped. Gets it to Hansen. Hansen immediately gets it to Nickham. And Puckering. And it seems to me that the Rams are just getting a bit more confident in these conditions. Nickham to Hansen. But still, Nobody is doing for the Rams what the Ravens do so well, which is a handler throws it and then goes to get it back as quick as he can. We saw a little bit of it as they got near the end zone. Puckrin has to float it back to Palaz. Tries to get it to Hansen, but forces it a bit too quickly. And now you can see the Ravens really taking their time.
Yeah, the Ravens, a good opportunity to get a hold after such a long point, too, where you're not even sure who started on offense or defense anymore at the end of the point, but it can be a huge momentum shift for your team to come away with the score at the end of such a grindy point.
Sakamoto has Kolek. There's clearly something sneaky happening, and they nailed the play immediately. Wonderfully set up. That was an offensive hold. That was painfully close for the Rams to come. Do you think they have another play like that in them where they can cash it in? Because that's heartbreaking what we just saw.
I think if they can pull themselves together and recognize that they really did fight for that point and they had those opportunities, they know that they can put themselves in those situations again. They have to not worry too much about the fact that Carleton came away with that in the end, more focus on the fact that they were able to work it up the field. They figured out how to get their poppers and cutters involved in the play as well, and if they can do that again, they should be able to work themselves back up the field.
Yeah, they did seem to start to involve Ryerson and Garcia a little bit more on the final possession they had, or the second last possession they had. So hopefully we can see a bit more of that. For now, they're going downwind, and honestly, I think if you're the Ravens, you have to be thinking, you know, if we turn them and score this without a turnover ourselves, we win the game. Like, that's just a huge mental victory that is available for them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The response in this next point from both of these teams could dictate the rest of this game.
5-3 as my Irish body slowly gets used to the biting Canadian cold. And Palaz picks up the disc. Now you want to talk about cold-blooded. Huang back on the pitch. Palaz swings it. Still running the show. The Ravens trying to just muddle things up. Fang Lin. Such an excellent mark. Gets broken immediately as soon as I compliment him for it. Sharing sends it into the middle of the pitch. Barnsteiner gets it back to Huang. Huang has Sharing. Now you see the Ravens start to clamp around. He turns around. There's Barnsteiner. Gets it back. Huang dictating flow. Taking his time. Puckrin has Palaz behind him and hits him. Palaz has Sharing and Huang to either side, and not a whole lot happening in front of him, if we're honest. The downfield seems to be stagnating ever so slightly. So you see Puckrin with Huang immediately in front of him. Gets it to Palaz, and Huang again moving. And oh, fantastic defense. For a moment there, I thought the Rams had found their way through the switchy handler defense that was being played against them, but it turns out they just miscommunicated it, and brilliant block coming through from Harry J. He's got a second one of those in that part of the pitch.
Yeah, you can see Jay was poached off the back of the stack there, heads up, waiting for that upline cut to come the whole time. And unfortunately for Ryerson, they weren't able to see the poach defense throwing to what they thought was a wide open Puckrin there.
I thought Puckrin had just worked out the defense and had absolutely buried it. But there you go. Turns out he was being led into a trap rather than to the promised land.
And it looks like Jay there just took an injury sub. I think he kind of ran into the fence a little bit there after that D as well. So he just went off, and we've got a new player on the field here for Carleton.
Who now look to really twist the screws. But unfortunately, that one bounces out of the hands of Fang Lin. McLawson just putting it a bit too far away from him. There's now Palaz. And we see the Ravens having to defend the position that they just scored from, and it's another backhand break. Comfortably done.
Yeah, good response there from Ryerson. That's exactly what they needed after that long point, to be able to come back with a little bit of a quicker one. They did turn it over, but they were able to take advantage of the execution error there from Carleton, and that's exactly what you want to do. If you get that second chance, you can't waste it in this game.
So 2 points in a row. We have seen the teams on offense turn in their own end zone, or close enough to it, and a quick backhand around break for the score. Did seem somewhat that the Rams were relying more on individual talent, whereas the Ravens quite blatantly had a plan. They set up Kolek, and they went, look, you're going to stand in the open side, you're going to go break side, and we're just going to try and break it to you immediately. And that's exactly what they did, whereas from what I could tell, the Rams seemed to just be kind of like, here are our best players, one of you's going to go get free.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A little bit more discipline on the side of this Carleton team right now. And maybe that's a little bit where some of that depth is showing as well. Ryerson only with 2 lines of players here today, only 14 bodies right now. They do have more people joining them tomorrow for whatever division they end up in. But it's going to start to show when you're playing the same players over and over again and maybe missing some of the chemistry of some of their top players. They're missing the likes of Jason Hoon, a huge player in the Toronto scene, plays for Toronto's GOAT, not able to be here today due to work. It's a Friday. Unfortunately, not everyone's able to be here.
No, that's very true. A man playing in the college championships also has work on a Friday. Well, there you go. Doesn't he just do everything? As we see Lockhead looking to do one thing, and that is lead his team to Division 1. Bailey with the disc. Beautifully sends that one down the pitch for major gains to lay, and Sakamoto looks to pop it into CUUC and does so, and that looks a lot more like the Ravens we saw in the first point.
And CUUC, at least with about 3 or 4 goals to his name now as well for this Carleton team. It's unguardable in that final third of the field. You can see when he sets his eyes on the end zone, he is going. But credit to the rest of his team, giving him the space to make those cuts as well. Like we've said before, so disciplined in their offense.
I think that has become the apparent factor between the two teams. The clarity of the Ravens. You can see their training shining through compared to more of the manic talent that the Rams are trying to ride through into Division 1. And I have to tell you, in my experience, it is the former, not the latter, that succeeds.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this game goes. I have to agree with you. The discipline that Carleton is showing right now, if they continue to trade like this, I think they'll be happy throughout the course of this game as well. They look very comfortable, still keeping some of their top players on the line, of course, as well. So some tiredness may start to show later. We'll see if that discipline can carry on through the course of the game.
Well, we already saw a significant drop in it. Both teams coming out looking quite good in the opening few points. And then there was the rather lengthy exchange between the Ravens and the Rams, with the Ravens trying to get a downwind offensive hold. Eventually they were able to come away with it. And that was to make it 5-3 when I really thought the Rams were going to tie the game up in that instance. And now they find themselves once again chasing the match. And there's the first rolling pull. I'm going to take credit for it. That was my idea. And there's the detrimental aspect of it. Sliding all the way back. So didn't get that much of a gain. It's Palaz. Marks his way forward. Huang juking and jiving. Not able to get free. Puckrin has Barnstein in the middle of the pitch. Or Barnsteiner, sorry. But can't quite get it to him. It's now Palaz. And the movement just seems uninformed from the Rams offense. They're not really doing much to pull it apart, as you see the Ravens almost immediately transition now to man. Huang getting low to collect that one. Flo Rida would be proud. Pops it over the top, and once again we see those cheeky backhand breaks as Palaz goes for an arcing all the way around. Throw it up Puckrin, but it was always dropping.
And that's the wind just pushing that down, but that's a great idea there from Palaz. He had 2 open receivers on the far side of the end zone, just really had to get more float on that disc for it to hang up for Puckrin. I like that idea and that decision, though, from the Ryerson offense.
So now Fang Lin. CUUC gets it back. Sakamoto to CUUC, and look at how quickly the Ravens are starting to move with it. I just love to see that give and go game, and they really seem to have tried to build themselves around it, working for each other tirelessly. As you see Campbell starting to take control. And this is what we're talking about when it comes to depth. They have Fang Lin, they have Sakamoto, they have Campbell, they have CUUC. All players who are capable of leading a line this way forward. And that's without even mentioning the likes of McCausland. Whereas that list is a lot shorter when you're talking about the Rams, both figuratively and literally. And McCausland gets back into the middle to Campbell, who starts Fang Lin, and you can see how quickly they move the disc, how effortlessly, and they know exactly what they're doing. One of my favorite things to see is the likes of Tash Jin, who collected it and popped it without even looking downfield. Sakamoto gets it back into the middle. Campbell. As McCausland, he hits them. Trying to book their way into Division 1 of the Mustashians. Sakamoto. Somewhat abandoned. McCausland tries to come around for him. The Solgan has to be getting higher. Eventually able to get it to CUUC. Decides against forcing that break to Campbell. Gets it back into the middle. Beautiful swinging play. And Ravens don't look like anyone is making them do anything they don't want to do. Fang Lin just about collects that one. It's called inbounds and pops it immediately to Sakamoto for the score. No discussion, just a lapse of defensive concentration, and how impressive was that?
And great communication there between the Carleton players. Fang Lin bringing it inbounds and so quickly recognizing that he had an open receiver on that near cone right in front of his reach as well. And Carleton now 7-4, getting the upwind point here, looking so dominant now. I love how they're able to move it so quickly through the zone, moving it at pace, but then as they got closer to the end zone, they slowed it down and they stayed patient until that opportunity opened up.
I was very impressed with that offense. That looked like Division 1 upwind offense. So the Ravens, with the wind at their backs and very much filling their wings, currently soaring 3 points above the Rams. They're not quite out of it, but you can't help but say they look a little bit like they might be.
Yeah, and Ryerson here calling a timeout, and just to do that, to try to get themselves back into the game. Like you said, not quite out of it. They are only 3 points down, but they've got to find a way to break upwind, get that point, first get a hold, then find a way to get themselves into that break position, still looking for their first break of the game, unable to take apart that Carleton offense that is so disciplined, and we can't say it enough. They're really doing a good job of creating space for each other and knowing who's supposed to be making that next cut.
Something I was a little bit afraid of at the time when they weren't able to punch in the score despite being on the upwind end zone line of the Ravens. Would they get another chance? Now they have to do it starting with the disc. It is just as difficult, if not slightly more so, because you don't get to warm yourself up with a little bit of defense first. That's always just been my particular position. And this is a crucial point. If the Ravens score this, remember they started this half on defense downwind. If they score this, they come out with an immediate upwind offense, or downwind offense, sorry, to put it in, and that is a commanding position to be in. That's why I always like picking D first. It is a slight disadvantage, but if you get a break in the first half, you get a free one in the second half.
Yeah, so the natural break of the weather.
So gambling on themselves seems to be working right now for the Ravens. And it's a big line, literally and figuratively for them. You see the likes of Sakamoto, McCausland, Lay, who's been fantastic cutting for them so far. CUUC as well out there. And flanked by Lockhead.
And I gotta say, I'm not sure when the last time CUUC took a sub was. I think he may have been off maybe once or twice in this entire game so far, and he's been a mainstay on this offensive and defensive unit here. Carleton putting nothing to chance, keeping their top players out there despite the lead that they have now. They don't want to leave anything here for Ryerson to come back.
An understandable, and personally for me, admirable position to take. The leaders don't want to step off. They want to make sure they book themselves a spot here. I don't know about you, but I just find the casual way with which CUUC one-hand snags everything. What's up with that? It's like the wind isn't within 2 feet of him.
He's got magnets on his hands right now.
As we see Hansen starting things off, able to get it off to Puckren. As Puckren looks, Hwang is one very difficult flick break away from him. Barnsteiner was a little bit closer, but brilliant step through D by Lockhead. As you're starting to see ever so slightly the Ryerson Rams flag in the wind. That throw was a bit low and was always going to be difficult for Campbell to take it in, so they get away with that one. Uncharacteristic from Lockhead. Hwang gets it to Sharing immediately. He's behind him again to collect. He has Puckren going deep and he sends it to him. McCausland's underneath it, but Puckren comes across and is able to get there first. On the doorstep of their first upwind score, it would be an offensive hold, but it would also be a huge moment for them. Hansen tries to finish the play, and it's as if the gods themselves are against the Rams. That one bouncing off the outstretched fingertips of Puckren.
Just maybe thinking he already had it in his hands. He closed his hands there.
And it bounces off of McCausland's hands, but of course Sakamoto is there to collect. He thinks about the deep shot, thinks about a second deep shot, decides against both of them. Lockhead has an under available, takes it on the second asking. I believe that's CUUC, but it could be Campbell. They look very similar and they're wearing the same hat. As Sakamoto sends that one deep, and there's Campbell on the other end of it, but it's just a little bit too far ahead of him.
You can see he thought about bidding for that one as well, but the disc was moving with quite a lot of speed going downwind. It would have been quite the play to try to get to that one.
I feel like that's one of those situations where you very quickly weigh things up. I mean, I could get this disc, but I also like having unbroken ribs. And in that situation, he went with the disc. He went with the ribs over the disc. Not what I'd do, but that's also why I can't play anymore. So, here we see Huang. One more time. Trying to marshal his troops. Downwind movement comes from the 2-5 in these situations. It's questionable. McCausland. Sorry, that wasn't McCausland. That was Lay, but he made a huge bid and didn't quite get it. Really want him to get a layout for obvious pun-based reasons. As Huang sends it down the line to Shering. But they are really clamped to that sideline. The wind blowing into their faces and ever so slightly towards that direction as well. And again, a mix-up on the dump.
Yeah, Huang was not ready for that one to be coming to him and had a chance to go and get that disc and wasn't able to react in time.
Lockhead. Cameron couldn't quite get free from him. Now Sakamoto. So that one's going to go back. Great defense, it has to be said, I think, from Nickham on Cameron, sorry, number 88. The dump. Turning them to go to their second option in the form of Sakamoto. And there is Huang coming off the pitch, and maybe that's why he didn't play some earlier offensive points. That is a huge loss. That's a tent pole collapsing for Ryerson's Division 1 hopes. We hope he can be back on the pitch soon, as I'm sure all of the Rams do as well. We wish him the very best. Coming onto the pitch. Now we see looking to take half in a commanding fashion, and with the promise of possession on the other side. McCausland, under pressure from Shering, goes with the big arcing flick. Nobody was really ready for it, least of all the Rams defense. Somehow they get away with that one, and Alex Cameron gets to take half, 8-4.
Yeah, Carleton there. Like you said, nobody really aware that that throw had even gone up. Cameron, the only one who really shoulder checked and saw that coming up, had to be a perfect throw into his hands there. Just sat up at the back of the field, but Carleton 8-4. Ryerson maybe will feel a little bit hard done by this. Should have had that point. Unfortunately, an execution error in the end zone. And Carleton, they're always going to take advantage of that second opportunity.
So, 8-4 it stands with Carleton coming back on offense and the wind at their backs in the second half. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we will be back to you then. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sports Centre, the home of the Canadian Ultimate Championships, affectionately known as the Thunderdome, as a storm brews gently on the horizon and hopes caught here in the autumn afternoon air, bustling about. I am Lorcan Murray here, breathless, at an epic event, joined by the breathtaking Rebecca Thompson. How are you feeling?
Feeling fantastic. We've got a good game on our hands. Carleton showing so much discipline with their offensive unit, and a chance now for them to start on offense going downwind here in the second half. A big task for Ryerson with only 30 minutes remaining. They need to go on a run, and they need to do it now at the start of the second half.
The Ravens really have looked as disciplined as the matron of a strict boarding school, whereas that kind of fly by the seat of your pants approach that the Rams take, trying to bash their way into the Division 1, hasn't quite worked out for them so far, as now they face somewhat of a mountain. But sure, if you're a mountain to climb, wouldn't you want to be a goat? As here come the disciplined Ravens. Lockhead, Campbell, back to Lockhead. Whoever taught these boys how to throw backhands really like to get that little flippant flick of the wrist in at the end of it. Colic pops it in, and that is textbook Carleton.
Carleton now looking well on their way to joining the other teams already qualified for Division 1 Nationals this weekend. Colic, absolutely the general of this Carleton offense as well. He's been on both sides with assists and goals involved. I can't even count how many now points he's been involved in, but Carleton up by 5. They lead 9-4, and the Rams, if they can't answer in the next few minutes, I don't think there's any way they can get themselves back into this one.
At 9-4 in these kind of windy conditions, it does become a very sizable task indeed. A lot of upwinds are required, so there will be time. It's difficult for teams to score quickly going upwind, so there is that on your side, but they need to start shortening the gap, and they need to start shortening it soon. First off, though, it all starts with an upwind or downwind hold. So that is what they're going to have to try and achieve here. And you've got to think that the short lines are starting to have an effect. You must forgive us if you hear any slight shivering or chattering over the comms. We're doing everything we can. We've armed ourselves with blankets.
Is a little bit cold, but I've said it before, classic Canadian University Ultimate Championships every year. Despite the nice weather the 3 days before this event, always going to be cold by the time we get here.
Always going to be a little bit chilly, as Hansen, known for his relaxed approach as well, tries to lead them. Sharing, who I've been very impressed with so far, gets a little bit of contact from Fang Lin. And you want to talk about tenacious, dogged defenders. Fang Lin has just been pestering the Rams, Ryerson, all game long. As there's the drop back. Peloz. He has Hansen, he has Sharing, but again, there's no real downfield penetration. The timings of the cuts are so ineffective at pulling apart this zone, as that one is just a little bit ambitious, and it bounced out of the hands of Sharing, asking a lot of him. And well, I don't know about you, but I'd be concerned if I was a Ryerson fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Paula's apologizing for that one there.
Fang Lin, front of the end zone. McCausland tries to get free, can't. Instead goes back into the middle, and Campbell, not liking his options immediately, starting to run out of time, but instead goes for the ambitious flick break. And once again, in case you forgot that you were watching InterVarsity competition, a little bit of a mistake, a little bit forced.
Yeah, and uncharacteristic from Campbell and the Carleton unit there. They've been so patient and able to create space in the end zone, but that one just forcing a throw through to the break side. Not exactly sure what the intentions were, honestly, with that one.
So Peloz, as the Ravens were unable to cash in what was a short field opportunity and what would have had to be considered the final nail in the coffin. You gotta commend the smiles that Peloz is still able to bust out. Not too worried. There's a huge flick, Huck. I mean, it was done in very much of a, oh god damn it, kind of resolution, one would have to say, but where was that throw 6 possessions ago?
Yeah, that one really did not want to stay in their own end zone, get it out of Callahan territory. And I gotta add to what you said, Palaz constantly smiling no matter what the situation through this game. A great attitude, clearly enjoying his time playing some Ultimate.
As McCausland trying to gain legitimacy for his facial hair with his play, as that one was just a little bit too lackadaisical. I don't even think Barnsteiner was aware he was making that D before he made it. As they keep the swing around, and that one somehow finds its way to Nathan Lee. I don't think it should have, but it did, as Hansen, looking down the end zone, once again has to go back to the dump so quickly. Puckrin decides against the downfield on the second chance to Palaz, but they're very reluctant to throw to some of their players, or at least it seems like that to me.
Looks like some of their players are having a hard time getting involved in the game. I have to agree. We're saying the same names over and over and over again. So will be good to see some new names maybe get involved. If they could use all 7 players on the field, that would certainly help them get back into this one.
As McCausland shaking his head. No, that was up. I mean, I bobbled it, but I caught it before it hit the ground. From over here, it seemed questionable. As now he's starting to explain it to the observers. It's good to know that with the introduction of observers, people still do the whole miming out exactly what happened thing. So that part of the culture remains.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to show the observer what happened as well. They always want to make their point and make it clear in these situations.
So they get it to the sideline again. McCausland sends it back into the middle. And unlike the Rams, we're starting to see more players come onto the Ravens and really have a flow. Gertchenstein that time. As McCausland again, stuck ever so slightly, gets to Fanglin. Gets it across to Campbell. And then Fanglin again. Campbell. Beautiful play, and that time it just bounces out of the hands of Gertchenstein. You'd have to think he was looking downfield before he completed the catch. A common error. So now Puckrin with the chance to pop this one in. You have to imagine he goes to Palaz immediately and does so. But that doesn't really show us what we need to see from the Rams if we're to believe they can get their way back into this match.
Yeah, it seemed like Ryerson on that one really using the wind to their advantage, able to get some turnovers from Carleton. Carleton, on the other hand, had the opportunity all the way at the other side of the field, uncharacteristically forcing a decision there as well. So if Ryerson can start to take advantage, maybe some tiredness playing into that decision up there, if that can continue, Ryerson could get themselves back into it just by the sheer nature of grinding every single point out.
And I suppose that is something you come to expect from these kinds of teams. Hard grinding, hard graft. And that is what they're going to need to lean on now. Bit more of a defensive look. See the likes of Nickham and Reason make their way back out, as well as Garcia. But you have to worry. Huang doesn't seem like he's going to be returning to the game. And that is a massive loss.
Yeah, he's putting on his jacket on the far sideline right now, and unfortunate for Ryerson. A little bit of depth in their handling unit now gone, and they're forced to keep on a lot of the same players point after point here. And you see Hansen and Schering both haven't come off in quite some time, and now Puckrin also staying on the field if they're going to be able to get themselves a break here.
So Nakam with one of the better upwind pulls we've seen today. And the Rams do a good job of getting there in time to shut it down. Although immediately you see the Ravens go to work. Lockhead getting things going. Bailey, who's been so consistent for them. Nothing flashy, but hasn't made any mistakes either, and you need those kinds of players if you're going to play effective zone offense. The thankless task, the linchpin in it, Sakamoto. He's had a few stellar plays himself, a real leader of this team, and then goes for one of the cheekiest. Was that a low release, high release flick? Is that a thing? Who cares? Sakamoto was able to do it, and it worked as they get it back to Bailey now. Bailey has Campbell to one side of him, Lockhead to another, eventually gives it to Campbell. This is better defense, or it looked like it. Huge rescue, but it bounced out of the hands of Colic. The second attempt, always doomed to failure. As now we see Nakam, a man who was playing more of a mid-roll earlier on, coming in to try and help in the handler core. Hansen. Nakam. has an option. And again, you see their reluctance to really go out of the hands of their experienced players. Garcia. Hiding under his hood. Gets it back to Schering. Thinks about the deep shot. Decides against it. He has Hansen. He has Reason. Gets it to Reason. Reason has Young in front of him, but reluctant to throw it to him. Hansen tries to swing it all the way around. And does so. I believe that's Puckram with the disc, who's recently adopted some kind of headwear. Schering. Into Hansen. It's going to be a call.
Looks like a travel call here on Hansen, just debating what the outcome will be. The observer coming in to listen to the discussion now.
This is a huge moment.
You can see the observer is signaled there. Sudomoko there actually just retracted his call as well. So good discussion and good spirit shown by both players.
Excellent stuff. Hansen knocking at the opportunity for an upwind break. Their first of the game, gets it to Reason with rhyme and such. They do so brilliantly.
And like you said there, Lorcan, their first break of the game here as well. Could be quite the game changer, able to get it upwind. If they can get a quick hold down here, they're back within 2 in this game. Of course, time not on their side, just over 15 minutes left to go in this one. So they're going to have to do it, and they're going to have to find a way to do it quickly. Carleton, on the other hand, could be quite content to keep possession of the disc, swing it, work it up the field with patience, and run down the clock a little bit.
Something else we have to keep in mind. 2 upwind breaks. That was their first of the game. They did come close once before, but they need 2 more upwind breaks if they want to take the lead. So that's at least that to get back in this game. And with the amount of time left, you have to imagine if the Ravens score 11 points, I don't think the Rams can win this game.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And it may have all just been left a little bit too late here for Ryerson. However, a good job for them to maybe now have a little bit of confidence to know that they can break this team, they can break their offense, and they can get it upwind. So good to know that and have some confidence going here, but it may just be a little bit too late.
And they did it all without the incredibly important role of John Huang as well, so not entirely lost. I still just every now and again catch a look at Palaz, and he seems like he's having the time of his life.
He absolutely is definitely enjoying his time out here, and it's always a good thing for any team to have a player who is constantly in a positive state of mind, always having a good time with it, and maybe able to keep the rest of the team relaxed and not get too frustrated.
So now we see Young, Garcia, and Reason making up that cup. Trying to trap them. Bailey, though, he has been unflappable so far today. Unlike a Raven. Lockhead gets it back to Bailey. And Campbell is available for the swing, but he says no. Excellent coverage by Garcia to stop that inside break, which is where they've been punishing them before. Campbell linking up, working well. Lockhead now has it again with the wind hurtling into him. As they try to clamp down, you see a deep cut from Lay. Sakamoto with the disc in the middle. Campbell, tireless, like a typewriter, just back and forth. Gets it to Sakamoto. And there's a beautiful leading pass down the pitch to Lay. He has Colic. Decides against it. And again, the discipline comes to the fore for this Raven side. They know what they can do, and more importantly, they know what they can't. Bailey, beautiful. And I tell you what that man can do. That man can hold the disc and he can get it back to somebody. And somehow Lockhead corrals that one. Plays it to Lay right in front of the end zone. He has Colic. He has Sakamoto. Instead, he takes the easy pop. Of course he does, because that's how Carleton score.
Amazing job from Carleton there. Like you said, so disciplined again, always hitting the open option, and you can tell there is so much communication going on down on that field with the team as well, telling each other where the next pass should be, telling them who should be cutting next as well, and it makes it so that there's always somebody cutting to the open side, and there's always movement coming from that stack in the end zone. They're doing such a good job, and now holding so nicely, so clean upwind. I don't think there's much that Ryerson can do at this point in the game.
It does seem like the gap should be there. How many times in spirit circles have you heard a captain say, I don't think the scoreline reflects the game? I have to tell you, Becky, I think the scoreline reflects this game.
Yeah, in this case, Carleton has just shown a little bit more depth, more poise, and they've been able to carry it through despite the fact that they have been playing the same players for the most part throughout this game. They're not showing any signs of tiredness. They had one or two maybe unforced errors throughout this game, but for the most part, they've remained very clean, and that is the difference in this game.
So, now they look to close it out. The clock ticks ever closer. 10 minutes left. 4 points in the difference. And going into the wind, you have to say you're concerned for the Rams. But they haven't lost any of that spirit, any of that verve. As Hansen collects it, looks to send it to Schering. And Puckren. Here's Barnstein in the middle of the pitch. At the start of this game, they were really relying on the likes of Peloz and Huang. Hansen's come into it more. Puckren really has lately as well, as that one just goes far too close to McCausland, who collects it immediately. He has Fang Lin in front of him. Instead, he just floats that one out comfortably for Campbell to collect on the break side. And that's 11-6.
And like you said before, if Carleton can get to 11 points, I think that's probably game for them. Up 11-6 now. They've really punched in hard on this Ryerson team in the second half. Ryerson able to get that one break, but unfortunately for them, Carleton so effortless up the field and always able to hit the break side as well. Their throwers so capable of making the mark move.
So, a commendation to a team who you have to say, I fancy the Ravens' chance. I think we might see them again on Saturday in Div 1. The way they're playing, it's more the structure than it is anything else. The decision making, and like you were talking about, the clarity with how they cut for each other. I haven't really seen that so far today from many other teams.
Yeah, they're definitely earning their spot, and other teams who've already qualified for Div 1 will be well aware that Carleton is going to qualify at this point, and they'll be aware that this team has been so efficient and so good, and they're going to have to find a way to break down that offense and make Carleton force some decisions in order to get those turns.
Would you have any advice for them on that front, or advice that could perhaps be given to the Rams right now as they look to continue their season?
Well, I think the Rams at this point, they've got to find a way to work in more members of their team on the field. They're not quite using their depth as much as they want to, maybe in part due to the fact that they're missing a lot of players, missing some of that chemistry today. That's always possible, but they've definitely got to get more people involved as the weekend continues.
It's Peloz. And you can see this is some fantastic defense, but he takes his time working his way through it. The Rams starting to involve a few people. Puckren pops it back to Hansen. And then Hansen goes with a huge blade, trying to lash it all the way to Reason in the end zone. He almost gets there. A couple milliseconds too late. I like that ambition. The execution was a little bit off. I like that ambition. You're 11-6 down. Maybe a flick blade is what's called for.
Absolutely, and I'm very impressed with Reason's ability to get a hand to that as well. Did not think that he was going to have a play on that disc, so a good choice there from Hansen. And I want to see Ryerson start to try more things like that and get some momentum going, even going into the rest of this weekend in Division 2 Nationals.
So now we see the Ravens starting to bleed out and get a few new players onto the pitch for them. Schering runs through there and just slaps it down. An immediate foul call from Dylan Kong. He has Robinson right in front of him. And this is the kind of expansiveness we were talking about. There's a lot of new faces from Carleton on this line. Gertjenstein, haven't seen too much of him. We've seen hardly any of some of the other players out here though.
Maybe one of the first points in this game where we haven't seen CUUC on the field.
Excellent observation. And I think that more than anything says how secure the Ravens feel in their current position. As they get that one across, but only just about. And look at how good the second tier is. Tashjin with the disc pops it back, disciplined as you like. Gertjenstein gives it back to him, and this looks like the exact same Ravens team who we've been watching all game long, except none of the names, apart from Fang Lin, who seems to be a part of everything, except for that final pop, bobbles a little bit. But you have to say, it looked very similar, and to have that consistency throughout the squad speaks to their possibilities, as Hansen again goes for the flick blade. And Schering just, exhaustion starting to kick in, I believe, there for him.
You can see Puckren, Paulus, and Hansen there smiling and laughing between the three of them, kind of maybe questioning the decision, but also enjoying what they're here to do today. They will likely be, at this point headed to Div 2 Nationals, but it's good to see them trying a few different things. We haven't seen a huge deep game from this Ryerson team throughout the course of this game.
No, not that much of it at all. They've preferred to go for a lot of those under and beautifully incisive cutting. As that one just floats past the outstretched hand of the intended receiver, Connor Bailey. He seemed almost confused by the fact he didn't catch it, like he was mad at his hand.
I think the wind maybe just pushing it down, not where he expected that disc to sit up.
So Hansen, will he go for another flick blade? I gotta tell you, I hope so. Oh no, he's being forced backhand and he just takes the open backhand shot. Comfortably done, and the Rams get another score.
Maybe some miscommunication there between the mark and the upfield defense. Switching the mark, I think, a little bit on that one and giving the open shot. Hansen doing a really good job to recognize that, take advantage quickly. And Ryerson now still down by 4 points, 11-7, only 9 minutes remaining, but it's good to see that they are capable of recognizing those situations and adapting on the fly.
So now, what you have to feel are some closing exchanges. A couple more familiar faces retake the pitch for the Ravens, the likes of Colic, Lockhead, Sakamoto, Bailey. And we can see Garcia, Peloz, Nickham, Shering. Shering has put in a shift. That dude has been working hard all game long, and it's to his absolute credit, a real leader for this Ram side and someone who will have a lot to say, I think, in the Div 2 competition to come. Should we speak so prematurely?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that this Ryerson team here in the game to go won't have a say in the final conversation of Div 2 Nationals as well. They will be gaining some players tomorrow, so adding a little bit of depth to their team, and I will not be surprised at all if we see them into the later stages of that competition.
So now Lockhead. He's got a job to finish. Gets it into the middle of Cameron. Pops it down the line to Bailey, and just so much yards for him to eat up. Casual in how he's come to collect that. Sakamoto. Almost like there isn't a defense. And that one, well, that one just looked easy.
And that's what Carleton have been able to do so well all game. Make it look easy. Take shots that they're just so confident in their ability to get the disc to their receiver, and knowing the ability there of Lay to make that grab. Carleton in the driver's seat, up 12-7. There's no way they're not headed to Div 1 Nationals at this point.
I would tell you, the largest comeback I ever saw was a team who were 12-3 down, come back and win 13-12. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility, and that is something about Ultimate. Although, I suppose it is really. They've got 6 minutes to score 6 points, otherwise the game. I forgot about the hard cap, which is something I like about the hard cap. I'm not a fan of it in knockout games such as this, but in some situations you have to use it.
Yeah, I do think it's definitely credit to Carleton's ability to have gotten this big of a lead to this point of the game. They've worked really hard for it, and Ryerson, like you said, definitely with time on their hands would not be out of the realm of possibilities. Ultimate can be very much a game of runs as well, and things can change on a dime. But in this situation, time not on their side, and at this point, like you said, they'd have to score a point a minute in order to come back, and I don't think that's realistic here anymore.
Something that may be indicative of the Ravens taking the foot off the pedal, or maybe the Rams finding themselves a little bit more despite losing players. The second half is currently 4-3 to the Ravens. The Rams about to receive the disc, and they started on defense, whereas they lost the first half 8-4. Although the Ravens have been trying to blood some of their more neophyte elements in these ladder exchanges, which is great to see, giving them a chance out on the pitch once the fear of being eliminated somewhat subsides. Beautiful throw from Barsteiner. Straight through the middle to Young, who then gets it to Reason, and now you're starting to see some of these extra elements come out for the Rams. Barsteiner, he has Nickham behind him. He has Shering as well, who was unmarked. Instead he goes to Nickham, and that's a difficult pass to get off. Excellent dump defense.
The reset defense there from Carleton, so quick and so tight there as well. Didn't give Nickham any options.
You see Robinson, one of the major players in that defense. On the last point, Fanglin goes down the line. He can't get it to him. Try to get it back into the middle of the pitch and do so. And Fanglin collects it again. Beautifully down the line. And this is nice, calm play into the wind. Perhaps too calm. Bailey's able to get it anyway. Not entirely sure how he got on the second asking. But they don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Talking to each other, having a good time. Carleton really enjoying their time out on the pitch right now. Norman under some pressure. So that's going to have to go back to Norman, who he's sharing had a stumble and is taking an injury.
Yeah, the injury called just before the throw actually went up there. So it does go back. Looks like Carleton here. Chance about 10 yards from the end zone now, and some new faces again on the field. So getting more of their members involved before they start to play in Div 1 tomorrow.
So Norman, who I think has only played points in the second half. Again, speaking to that expansion of their lines that you were talking about. And he just about is able to get that one off. Looked like it was going to be dropped momentarily. As the Ravens turn over. Nickham looks for options. Reason tries to cut. It's nicely done to the open side. He's able to get in front, but gets it on the break. And you can see how quickly he wants to move, perhaps too quickly, as Barnsteiner has that one bounce out of his hands.
Barnsteiner not totally ready for that to come in with the pace that it did. And like you said, Reason excited. He had the wide open break side cut in Barnsteiner, but just couldn't quite put enough love on that disc there.
Norman gets it down the line and bounces it off Fang Lin. That's still collected, and that is technically a pass. Andre Dixon gets away with it. That's in the rule books, though. You're allowed to do that. As Reason seems to be hurt.
Yeah, like you said, as long as the disc does go off the hands of somebody else, be it your own teammate or the other team, it is still in play for you to go back and catch your own throw at that point. Not sure what happened with Reason there. I think the disc will stay where it is, just saying there was an injury call, but that it did not affect the play.
So it comes back in, Fang Lin with the disc. Gets it back into the middle. That's Kong, and he hits beautifully Dixon for the score, and that's another upwind. Done by and large by what you would describe as the peripheral elements of this Ravens squad.
It's amazing to see how deep this team really is when they're put to the test right at the end of this game. There's a couple of shaky throws there, but they were able to come down with second effort, second attempts, and it's also great to see the fact that these players, despite the fact that they weren't involved in large portions of the game, have stayed warm, stayed energized, and like you said, they're playing a very similar style of offense. They're still efficient, they're staying disciplined, and they don't look totally different from the top unit of this Carleton team.
So, I do think that has to be commended and highlighted when the lower half of the team looks the same as the top half. That was always, for me, a litmus test on the legitimacy of a club. Does the philosophy bleed all the way down, or is it a matter of you're a bunch of good players and a bunch of friends of theirs who kind of hang out and play Ultimate sometimes? Or are you actually, do you have an ethos? Do you have a philosophy? Are you trying to create a certain personality on the pitch and exhibit it? And that, to me, has felt like the key difference between the Ravens and the Rams. As here come the Ravens one more time, squawking their way down the pitch. And that one lands just out of bounds for another pull, or for another brick. Awful lot of downwind bricks as well, which is a really bad thing, because a good pull is the start of defense. And if you can hang that out and get somebody stuck in their own end zone, we've seen the effects it has, limited as those instances have been. There's Nickham, who's really stepped up and tried to take charge of this offense following Huang going out, and Palaz had to go out as well. You'll notice we haven't seen number 19 on the pitch in quite a long time either. Puckrin also has taken a bit of a step back as Garcia looks too young in the end zone, can't quite get it to him. Instead has Hansen. And Hansen launches one high up, it's floating, and Young might just get it, and does. Excellent stuff. Oh, sorry, that's Mark Persick. But he's able to get the score, and that is game. So you can see exactly how much it means to the Ravens as they run onto the pitch. And the Rams, obviously, a little bit disappointed. Commiserations to them.
Yeah, the Rams, they did start to do some more interesting movement in the second half. Unfortunately, Carleton, so disciplined, so much depth on their roster, and a very well-deserved earned bid here to CUUC Division 1 Nationals.
So the CUUC, or the CWC, which you can't call it because that's a different letter, but we'll get into that later. That's a personal issue I have with the English language. It's a double V. Anyway, so that's the end of our second game, and those are the 2 open games we have covered so far. Congratulations to Ravens for qualifying through to Div 1, but there remains one contest yet to be held on this stream. There remains one prize yet to be grabbed, that brass ring hovering above the heads of 2 competing sides in the women's division. Rebecca, what do we have to look forward to?
Well, we're going to be seeing an exciting matchup between the University of Toronto and McMaster University here at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. In about 20 minutes now until game time. Both of those teams were in Division 1 last year, so one team will not be returning to the show this weekend. It's definitely going to be a good game for you here.
All right, so in 20 minutes' time, you know exactly where you need to be, and you know exactly who you will be with. I have been Lorcan Murray, joined by Rebecca Thompson, and we will see you shortly.